Glorious day, smart listeners. 2 videos in 1 week. Yeah, we're back on. Alright. This video is inspired by me calling my listeners or describing my listeners as wimpy in my last video. So I'm sorry for that. The sentiment still stands, but it is also my duty to inspire you with heroic notions. And so today I want to talk to you about Hercules, some of the cool things that I know about Hercules. Hercules is a famous mythical creature, half god, half man, and he's very well known for his 12 labors of Hercules. Now, as Hercules traveled around the world, everywhere he was going, people knew he was going to be there. So they received him with love and admiration through parties and celebrations upon his arrival. And the kings in each land were always very jealous. Very, what would we say, concerned that Hercules was going to take their throne from them. And of course, Hercules is a good guy. He's not interested in overthrowing any kings or anything like that. But what the kings would do is they would pretend to receive Hercules with great blessings. And amongst the celebrations, they would pull Hercules aside and say, Hercules, listen, we've got this major problem. Whether it was Medusa or the Cyclops or whatever type of incredible issue that the king couldn't solve, the king would send Hercules to deal with that issue. And the king was always sending Hercules to die. That was essentially it. The kings never wanted to be labeled as killing Hercules straight up, but they knew if they could send Hercules to his certain death, that then the relief would be there, that Hercules wouldn't be able to take over their kingdom anymore. And of course, Hercules would just smash the problem and get on to the next one. That's why the people loved Hercules, is because Hercules solved the problems that, the kings claimed they were there to solve, but couldn't actually do it. And, there's obviously some interesting factors about being a king, especially in the modern world. Queen Elizabeth recently passed, and King so-and-so is on the throne now, but these guys are just puppets. They are puppets for the behind-the-scenes governors, and the original kings and queens were meant to be intermediaries between the common man and the gods, or the common people and the gods. And it was through their noble governance, their ability to actually solve the problems like Hercules did. I mean, obviously Hercules was the god of earth, because everywhere he went, he solved the problems. And so we're getting a little bit off track with Hercules, but I do want to now tell you about a very heroic deed done by a king, and this is King George III. And this story happens from the 7 Years' War. In 1763, Canada, and actually America, North America, has a massive battle for supremacy of the continent between the French and the English. And upon winning what's called the 7 Years' War, King George III gives 2/3 of North America back to the natives. And actually in the Royal Proclamation of 1763, which you can look up online anytime you want, King George, in his division of North America, clearly states everything west of the sources of the rivers that run from the Appalachians. So King George is over in England. He hears that his men have won supremacy of North America for the English, and he gives 2/3 of it away to the native people, who, it's obviously their land. I mean, if you take care of the thing and use it the best, it's yours. That's another side note. Prior to title law, whoever was going to use the thing the best owned it. And potentially that's still in effect. I ultimately believe whichever is the truest law is supreme, not whichever law has been passed by some yahoos in some room where they're all, you know the deal. Anyway, so King George III, imagine, he claims England for himself and the ocean and the rivers that go up into the Appalachians and everything west of that. And he says it's not only Indian land and has always been Indian land, but is to remain Indian land. And any European settlements that are on this land west of the Appalachian Mountain Ranges are to remove themselves immediately, because the indigenous people are a crucial contributor to a healthy world. He knows, he's living in England. He knows, the crown, our European way of life, we're going to pillage every forest. We're going to pave every freaking landmass so that we can rent it out, put up something and put up a parking lot, right? So he says, give 2/3 of this continent back to the natives. That is a heroic deed. That is a truly kingly deed, because it's not in his best interest. It is actually in his best interest, but it's not in the perceived best interest of the Crown Corporation or his kingdom to have as much land as we can, right? Yeah, we just want it all. No, why don't we give this massive amount to the people who are going to look after it the best and help us with it? So that's a true king. Absolutely a true king. And I know this story because of my interaction in the courts and how the Section 25 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms outlines Aboriginal entitlement, which says, these laws have been in existence. Section 25A mentions Indigenous rights have to do with any treaties that have been signed recently. And Section B says any rights in the Royal Proclamation of 1763. So I've brought forward this many times in court, and every time the judge is like, nah, that doesn't matter. So I know that's not a real judge, because a real judge is going to do what's right. A real judge is going to respect the true laws of not only the Constitution. I mean, Gareth Morley said in his last ruling, charter rights are ideals to strive for, even though in the first sentence or two it says these rights are guaranteed. So Gareth Morley is what do they call that, it's anyway, so let's get back to heroicism, right? Probably the most important story of Hercules is known as his 13th labor. Hercules is very famous for the 12 labors of Hercules, the golden fleece, the Cyclops, the Medusa. But after Hercules had completed has completed his 12 labors and essentially vanquished all these atrocities that were going on Earth, the gods poison him, and he comes to having ripped his family to shreds with his bare hands. His wife's decapitated, his children are in a million pieces, and there's blood everywhere. And Hercules is obviously such an awesome guy that it is no doubt the gods poisoning him and having him do this, and then he comes to. And the moral of this story is self-forgiveness. Hercules did all these amazing heroic deeds for the world, but his final deed, in order to maybe attain pure enlightenment or to fulfill his total evolution, is self-forgiveness. So I wanted to share that with you guys because It's always helpful to find the two poles of anything. And in regards to being a hero, there is ultimately the awesome heroic deed that vanquishes the negativity, slays the demon, so to speak. And there's also the other side of that, which is the personal forgiveness. We are not perfect. Nobody's perfect. Maybe that's what the story of Jesus Christ dying for our sins is supposed to inspire. The idea that, hey, you know what? Jesus died for my sins. I'm going to relieve myself of the self-blame that I have of not being a perfect person, because nobody's a perfect person. But that doesn't mean that we have a duty to become a perfect person sometime in our future. And definitely it's going to be a long, maybe billions of lifetimes to get there. But at least if we put a drop in the bucket every day, we do our due diligence to say our prayers, to do our deep breaths, and be inspired by this heroic notion. Make no mistake about it, folks. Each one of us here on earth is experiencing our own heroic journey. We will get beat down and we will get back up. Thank you, you heroic listeners. Lots of love to you. Bye for now. Peace.